again. Today we're going to have a bit of a start of a series we're going to do on discussing strength and conditioning and what strength and conditioning means to myself when I'm setting up things for people. My friend Paul's going to conduct this interview with me, and we'll see how it goes. So let's get into it.
All right, so I guess my first question is, strength and conditioning is a big buzzword going around at the moment. What actually is strength and conditioning, and what does it involve? I mean, is it, you see people at the moment are, just do a 6-week course and all of a sudden they're strength and conditioning coaches. What is strength and conditioning?
Okay, so strength and conditioning, like everything, all that, is a lifelong thing really that you would improve on. There are a number of courses that people can do to be an S&C. In Australia, you would have to join up a body like ASCA, in the US, the NSCA, but they are interchangeable. Normally, if you're a member of one, you can be a member of another. Some of the qualifications would be in 83 different odd countries that I'm qualified in as well. There is a tactical component of that as well, which is a separate branch of training for strength and conditioning.
So when you say tactical, what would that involve? Are you talking military?
Yeah, militaries, fireys, search and rescue, police, like CERT, SAG or whatever. Yeah. Doesn't mean you're going to run around teaching them how to use a tomahawk and shoot people. It's basically preparing them for what theatre they would be working in. Strength and conditioning for a sports team would be the length of a season. So you would have a pre-season, and getting through their season for maintenance. Tactical would be more, it could be specific, mission specific. You could be getting people ready for a particular line of work or job or whatever they're going to do overseas, versus if they're working here, rotating shifts, sleep deprivation and stuff like that all has a very big part. That's just from those two components, but then you have, as like chronic illness, I still believe that strength and conditioning as opposed to personal training, where you could have something like there's a wedding later in the year, so that would be your event or target date, and you build the person's body for that.
So that would be for somebody who's suffering from a chronic illness. You could actually get them, ready for a wedding or a special thing that they're going to do later in the year. You could actually plan for that, and you could actually work that in.
Yes, and that would be the hope of what you were aiming for then. So, you wouldn't be working out a strength base the same as you would with an athlete or a team, a neurological component, a bit of an endurance component. Years ago, I had a gentleman who was old, full of different cancers, diabetes and whatever, and all he wanted to be able to do was be standing at his friends' funerals as opposed to sitting. So we had to build a whole little strength base, and then we had a hypothetical, because of his friends that did have some terminal diseases, that he would be there for their funerals and he would be able to do that. But then you get other things, like you could have your MS, Parkinson's and that, and they might want to go to a family's friend's wedding or their kid's wedding or something. Yeah, and they just want to achieve a bit, they just don't want to be a burden. Yep. Because most of these people are very much doer type people, yep, and they just don't want to be a burden. They want to go there and enjoy themselves.
So with that, if you were going to set up a strength and conditioning program for somebody with an illness or somebody's come out like had a car accident or whatever, is it a good thing to maybe get their support network in to come and see you as well? If you're going to design a program up, would you get them in to come? So that everybody's on board and they all know what they're trying to achieve? Is that a good thing? And the other on that too is, would you, the mental side of it, in other words, being mentally prepared to be able to do what they're going to do, is that another component that you would work with?
Yeah, and that would be the same as when people go, strength and conditioning is really just for elite sports clubs or that sort of effect. So if it was a husband and wife going to go on a holiday, then I would have the husband in here with her, so he would know this is what could be an issue. These could be challenges. You don't say people cannot do anything, because no one gets the right to say that to people. And that way everyone's on the same page. If the person did start to have issues, like it could be, say, a hydration or chronic fatigue even type of thing, if they had MS, because they do wrestle with chronic fatigue more, and if you've gone to the Greek islands and you're walking on cobblestone paths, then, you know, there is an invite for a different issue, you know, or a different amount of problems, as opposed to the high performance component. Same sort of thing if you're doing up those volumes in developing athletes, whether those developing athletes be kids or whether it be someone who's decided to compete in their 20s, their training age is still very young as opposed to their chronological or biological type of age. So that has to be considered. Or if you're doing masters programs where you could have people who again have a very low training age because they were studying and developing businesses when they were young, so therefore they've never really competed, versus war horses who have had both shoulders reconstructed, knees reconstructed, ankle work, back fusions or whatever, who really just want to be able to get out there and do something. So in doing up a strength program or a conditioning program for people like that, there are very, very different considerations to be taken into it.
So is it better then to, is there two sides? So is there preventative strength and conditioning, or are they better off to, you know, set up a program prior to starting a new, whatever it is, a new sport or whatever? Is it better to come and see somebody like yourself and say, look, I'm about to I'm about to start playing football. I've played, you know, especially women in sport at the moment, a lot of them are playing netball and basketball, and all of a sudden they're going into football. Is it an idea to come and see you prior to that happening and saying, okay, I'm about to start playing football, obviously it's a different skill set, where do I go from here?
With that sort of thing, you have to look at a couple of things, like at what level they want to play at. If it's just at an ordinary club level and they did play those other sports for years, then their body will have certain wear and tear patterns through the body already. Certain pain, whatever. Especially say netball and or basketball, is we bear in mind that the length of a court is only around 20 odd metres to 22 odd metres, depending how they put it together. So athletes in these fields are never going to hit top speed, because a human being takes more than 30 metres to hit a top speed. You know, anytime you watch a sprint on TV, in Olympics or Com Games, you watch 100 metres, everybody's down, and then they all pop up at about 30, 40 metres, and then they've got to hit top speed. But with AFL type of stuff, they have to hit top speed and they have to be able to run at top speed. So all this acceleration, deceleration training they've done for years in that other sport can help them, but it can also bring up a lot of injury issues, because their body's got to learn how to run at top speed because it never has run at top speed. And the same with the contact kind of thing. There's a big difference between taking a charge on a basketball court versus being flattened. And it's the same in a way when people work around, as I've trained people through rugby, you know, sevens versus touch versus league, you know, versus everything else. Like they all employ a very different skill set in the athlete that you want.
So with athletes, for example, if with young athletes, like how young should they be starting strength and conditioning, or is there a point where it's too young? Do they because if on the, you look at YouTube and the internet and all that sort of stuff, and there's, you know, strength and conditioning people all over the place, right? So, you know, all of them seem to be at gyms and all sorts of, you know, gyms and all sorts of places. Can people do it, you know, in their own home? Do they need weights? Can it all be done body weight?
Yeah, look, strength and conditioning is a concept, it's sort of said, like, you've got an end date, mission, season or something, and you're training for that. Whereas personal training is, you know, workout of the day, Most gyms, you do the same program for 6 weeks and say, oh, that sucked, and I didn't like that. So then they will change that in your next program, but it's not really targeting any specific thing. So that's where I like when people have chronic illnesses, even terminal illnesses, is just to set goals, small little goals, so that they feel like I will do this in X amount of time. A friend of mine who passed away a couple of years back, he used to do a to-do list 2 days ahead, not tomorrow. So that way he knew he had to hang around for another day. And he outlived well and truly his life expectancy. He was one of my mentors in strength and conditioning. And this is the sort of thing what you're looking at, in my opinion, with that.
So, could you, if somebody came in with a specific injury, let's say, I don't know, sciatic pain, or they've had a rolled ankle, or they've been in a car accident, they've got bad neck pain or bad back pain, you could actually tailor a strength and conditioning program just for that specifically, or is it full body that you've got to look at?
You would be looking at both, because you have to integrate that rehabilitation into an overall thing. So if it was someone who played AFL or NRL or NRA or whatever, and they just wanted to play again, they have to be able to train with a team. So in order to train with a team, you need to have exercises that will enable that to happen. But then if it's a very good athlete, or if it's masters and people just get used to one another's injuries, then all exercises must have a regression and or a progression so that people can train as a team if it's a team sport, or if it's someone who has like PTSD or something to that effect, which we'll interview a fellow with at another time. They just have up and down days. They will have a day when getting out of bed is pretty much like they've run a marathon, versus the days when they are good. And that's where I like our glass half full, half empty. If this is what we've got today, this is what we've got. It's the same as if you're helping to work with coaches in a team. Team's getting belted up today, and skills coach wants to know really what can we do, and you can just sort of say, this guy's good for X amount of tackles, this guy's good for X amount of, because you've built that engine, you know what they're capable of. But then again, if you're going around into illness, when you see people, it's like, mate, today's not the day to go to town and do all these other things, because you're just not going to do it well. This is your industrial athlete versus a domestic athlete versus, our competitive.
So, I guess, we're going to be going over a few of these things for the next few weeks, talking about different things. But as a whole, with strength and conditioning, do you think, would it need to be done, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, every day of the week? Is it something that's going to have you need to be ongoing with for the rest of your life? What's
the beauty of strength and conditioning is you're building a skill set as opposed to just building a few exercises. So in that skill set, you would learn, this is what I need to hydrate myself. This is what I need to last with whatever. I'm going to go to wherever on holidays, it's freezing cold, therefore it will be windy and I will still dehydrate like it's sunny, because the wind's just going to suck the life out of me. And it's building up a set that you don't panic when you go to stay at, Thailand, and you go to the hotel gym and it's just a multi-stage machine, and it's like, well, I can't train now because none of this stuff fits into the thing. If we were using that tactical base, they don't have a pretty beautiful gym anywhere they go. If they're out in service duty, they're on duty. So they could just have ladders between buildings that they're doing chin-ups on and whatever. Again, if they were in a combative-based area, you wouldn't really want, I know some countries do, but most countries do not use weights in those areas, because if you become under a mortar attack or something to that effect, that's all shrapnel. Whereas if you had foam rollers, bands and whatever, then, it's just a pretty confetti or something. So you should be able to adapt, and a strength and conditioning coach should be able to adapt, as I've had to in the past. When you go away with state teams, they've booked accommodation, and guess what, there's nothing there. And the water, what they said was close, was a couple of k's away. So for recovery work, so you have to think on your feet in these kinds of jobs. But it isn't just, this is my workout or the Instamodel workout of the day. It is a plan, and whenever you were going to retrain, you would go, okay, this is my plan, and you would then operate within those realms of that plan of flexibility, nervous system training, and whatever else.
Look, I guess overall we're coming towards the end of our time today, because we don't want to go for too long, because we all know that the way the world is now is to get over and done with as quickly as possible. So I guess over the coming weeks we'll talk more about specifics of strength and conditioning. We'll talk about some other things as well, which we've already discussed. But so far so good. Hopefully everybody gets something out of this, and I'll leave it to you to close.
Yeah, look, I hope that people start to get, bearing in mind that this is my concept of strength and conditioning. I have been doing it for 30 odd years. And the way that I look at it is in that very broad element of what it can be used. It is not just always about high performance work. Okay. I'd like to thank Paul for interviewing me today and doing all the things he did. So this is Kung Fu Fossil signing off for now.